Aisha Carter stumbled from the Oakland courthouse, wrists stinging from fresh cuff marks, her assault trial dismissed after weeks of hell. Freedom tasted sweet until screams erupted. Homeland security agents stormed in, guns drawn, shouting she was a terrorist suspect. 2 weeks ago she'd kissed her son goodbye, expecting a routine day. Now her life lay in shards, racism's claws promising deeper wounds. The crowd froze, her fate teetering. What sparked this madness? Tell us where you're watching from, and if justice matters to you, hit like and subscribe because tomorrow's episode will leave you speechless. Aisha Carter stepped out into the late afternoon haze of Oakland, California, the sun dipping low over the jagged skyline of a city pulsing with life and unspoken tension. At 32, she carried herself with the quiet grit of a single mother, who'd clawed her way through night school to become a paralegal at Tanner and Associates, a scrappy little firm nestled between a vape shop and a taqueria on Telegraph Avenue. Today was special. In her left arm, she cradled a small, brightly wrapped box, a remote-controlled car for her 8-year-old son Jamal's birthday tomorrow. Her sneakers scuffed the cracked sidewalk as she headed home to their modest apartment in West Oakland, a neighborhood where murals of black heroes clashed with the faded scars of redlined neglect. She hummed softly, imagining Jamal's grin when he tore into the gift. The air smelled of diesel and fried plantains from a nearby food truck, and for a moment, everything felt right. Then came the screech of tires. A police cruiser swerved across her path, cutting her off like a predator pinning prey. 2 officers spilled out, their navy uniforms crisp against the chaos of the street. Officer Vance, a wiry man with a buzz cut and eyes like chipped flint, strode forward first. Officer Perry, thicker with a neck tattoo peeking above his collar, flanked him, hand resting on his holster. Aisha froze, the box slipping slightly in her grip. Vance barked her name, sharp and cold, as if he'd known her forever. Aisha. Carter, right? You match the description. Robbery suspect, black female, 30s, about your height. Her stomach knotted. She'd heard this script before, whispered in family stories, but never aimed at her. There's a mistake, she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. I'm just walking home from work. Here's my ID. She fumbled with her purse, pulling out her wallet, her fingers brushing the worn leather. Vance snatched it, barely glancing at the photo before tossing it to Perry. Doesn't matter, Perry grunted, stepping closer. You're coming. With us? Aisha's breath hitched. What robbery? I've been at my desk all day. Call my boss, Greg Tanner. He'll tell you. Vance smirked, a thin, cruel twist of his lips. Shut it, girl. We don't need your mouth. The slur slipped out like venom, low but deliberate, and Aisha's blood turned to ice. Before she could argue, Perry grabbed her arm, wrenching it back. The gift box tumbled to the pavement, its wrapping splitting open as the toy car skidded into the gutter. She yelped, twisting to see neighbors peering from porches and stoops, phones rising like silent witnesses. Help me, she called, but the faces blurred into a haze of fear and apathy. Vance slammed her against the cruiser, her cheek scraping. The hot metal, while Perry snapped cuffs around her wrists, the steel biting deep. You people always got excuses, Vance muttered, loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. Should have known better than to run around here. Aisha's mind raced. She hadn't run, she hadn't done anything. The injustice burned, but she bit her tongue, knowing words wouldn't stop this. They shoved her into the back seat, the door slamming shut with a clang that echoed down the block. The cruiser peeled off, leaving the shattered gift behind, a bright smear against the grey asphalt. Inside, the air was thick with the stink of sweat and stale coffee. Aisha's wrists throbbed, the cuffs too tight, but she kept her eyes forward, staring at the wire mesh separating her from the officers. Vance drove, his knuckles white on the wheel, while Perry radioed ahead, his voice clipped. Got her. Bringing her in. She tried again, softer this time. Please, just tell me what I'm supposed to have done. I've got a son waiting for me. Perry twisted in his seat, his glare cutting through her. You'll find out soon enough. Keep quiet or we'll add resisting to the list. The threat landed like a fist, and Aisha shrank back, her mind spinning. Jamal would be home from school soon, alone, wondering where she was. She pictured his small face, his gap-toothed smile, and clung to it like a lifeline. The ride stretched on, the city blurring past in streaks of neon and shadow, until they pulled into the Oakland Police Department's lot, a squat concrete fortress, ringed with razor wire. They hauled her out, her legs unsteady, and marched her through a side door where the public's eyes couldn't reach. Inside, the station buzzed with a cold efficiency. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh pools of white across scuffed linoleum. Aisha's sneakers squeaked as they dragged her to processing, her purse yanked away and dumped into a plastic bin alongside her phone and keys. A female officer, her face blank as stone, patted her down, fingers probing with mechanical disdain. "Strip," the woman ordered, tossing a grey jumpsuit at her feet. Aisha's cheeks flushed, but she complied, peeling off her blouse and slacks under the glare of a flickering bulb. The jumpsuit scratched her skin, too big and reeking of bleach. They took her fingerprints, the ink staining her hands like guilt she didn't own, then snapped mugshots, the flash blinding her. "Move," Vance growled, shoving her toward a holding cell. The door clanged shut behind her, a heavy slab of steel painted with years of despair. The cell was a coffin of cinder blocks, 10 feet by 10, with a single bench bolted to the wall. 2 other women sat inside, one rocking silently, the other glaring through matted hair. Aisha sank onto the bench, her body aching, her mind a storm of questions. She hadn't robbed anyone. She'd been filing case notes, eating a turkey sandwich at her desk, dreaming of Jamal's birthday cake. Yet here she was, caged like an animal, the weight of her blackness a crime they wouldn't name. Hours crawled by, the light outside fading to dusk. She pressed her palms together, whispering a prayer for Jamal, for strength. A guard banged on the bars, his baton ringing against metal. "Quiet in there," he snapped, though she hadn't spoken. The other women flinched, but Aisha held his gaze, her defiance a flicker in the dark. She knew this wasn't over. The cops had no evidence, no reason, but they didn't need it. She'd seen the stories, heard the warnings from her grandmother about Oakland's thin blue line, and its chokehold on folks like her. Still, she'd believed hard work could shield her. That belief lay shattered now, trampled like the gift, in the gutter. Around midnight, a familiar voice cut through the gloom. Greg Tanner, her boss, stood at the cell door, his tie askew, his pale face flushed with anger. "Aisha, I've got you out. Posted bail. This is bullshit." Relief flooded her, but it was tinged with dread. The guard unlocked the door and she stumbled into Greg's arms, her legs weak. "Thank you," she rasped, throat dry. He handed her a water bottle, his jaw tight. "They're saying you hit a convenience store on 14th Street. I told them you were with me all day. They didn't care." She nodded, sipping the water, its coolness a small mercy. As they walked out past the sneering desk sergeant, Aisha caught whispers from the bullpen. "Troublemaker," one cop muttered. "Should have locked her up longer," another chuckled. Greg squeezed her shoulder, guiding her to his beat-up sedan. The drive home was silent, Oakland's lights smearing into a haze. When she stepped into her apartment, Jamal rushed her, his small arms wrapping around her waist. "Mama, where were you?" he sobbed. She knelt, hugging him tight, the jumpsuit stench clinging to her skin. "I'm here now, baby," she whispered, but her eyes burned with unshed tears. The cops had taken her peace, her dignity, and left a crack in her world that wouldn't mend. Neighbors peeked through curtains, their murmurs already spreading. She'd been marked, branded by a system that saw her as less than human. As she tucked Jamal into bed, his gift lost to the street, Aisha vowed to fight back. She didn't know how deep this would cut, how the next blow would fall harder, but she felt it coming, a storm brewing in the shadows of a city that never slept. Aisha Carter woke to the faint hum of her apartment's radiator, the sound a fragile anchor in the storm that had become her life. Her wrist still ached from the handcuffs, red welts blooming like cruel tattoos, but she forced herself upright, on the sagging couch where she'd crashed after tucking Jamal into bed. The clock blinked 3 in the morning, its green glow casting shadows across the living room's peeling wallpaper. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the arrest, the cell, the sneers of those cops. Oakland's dawn crept in slow and grey, filtering through the blinds, but Aisha felt no relief. She brewed coffee, the bitter steam curling around her face as she stared at Jamal's birthday gift, now lost forever to the gutter. Her phone buzzed, a text from Greg Tanner lighting up the screen. "Meet me at the office at 8. We're fighting this." Her chest tightened with a flicker of hope. Greg wasn't just her boss, he was a bulldog in a cheap suit, a white guy who'd grown up in East Oakland and knew the streets as well as the law. She showered, scrubbing the jails, bleach stink from her skin, and dressed in her sharpest blazer, a navy number she'd bought for court appearances. Jamal stirred as she kissed his forehead. "Stay with Mrs. Evans next door, baby. I'll be back soon," she whispered, hating the quiver in her voice. By 8, she sat across from Greg in his cluttered office, the air thick with the scent of ink and old carpet. He leaned forward, elbows on a desk piled with case files. "I pulled strings last night. Got a buddy at the precinct to sneak me their security footage. Look at this." He spun his laptop toward her, clicking play. The grainy video showed the station's front desk at the exact time of the supposed robbery, 12 miles away on 14th Street. There she was, time-stamped, dropping off a deposition for Greg. "You were here, Aisha, ironclad. They've got nothing." Her breath caught, a smile tugging at her lips. "So we can end this?" Greg nodded, already dialing. "Filing a formal complaint with Internal Affairs. Those bastards, Vance and Perry, won't wiggle out of this." By noon, the complaint was lodged, a stack of papers faxed to the Oakland PD's oversight board. Aisha paced the office, her sneakers silent on the worn rug, while Greg worked the phones. At 2, he slammed the receiver down, grinning. They caved. Charges dropped. "You're clear." Relief crashed over her like a wave, warm and dizzying. She hugged him, tears pricking her eyes. "Thank you, Greg. I thought I was done." He clapped her back. "Not on my watch. Go home, celebrate with Jamal." She practically floated out, the weight lifting for the first time in 24 hours. The sun blazed high over Oakland, glinting off the bay in the distance, and Aisha dared to believe she'd won. She stopped at a corner store, picking up a new toy car with her last $20, imagining Jamal's squeal of joy. Victory tasted sweet, fleeting as it was. But Chief Roland Decker wasn't a man who let wins slip by unanswered. A hulking figure with a buzz cut gone grey, and a face carved from years of unchecked power, he'd run Oakland PD like a fiefdom for 2 decades. To him, Aisha wasn't a paralegal or a mother. She was an uppity black woman who'd dared to challenge his boys. He sat in his corner office, a wall of commendations behind him, scrolling through her file. The dropped charges stung, a crack in his armor, and he wouldn't let it stand. By dusk, he'd made a call to a lackey at the precinct's IT desk. "Pull her mugshot, blast it online, make it ugly." Within hours, Aisha's arrest photo hit every shady corner of the internet, a grainy snapshot of her wide-eyed and disheveled, captioned "Repeat offender busted again." The post, anonymous but reeking of Decker's fingerprints, spread like wildfire. Her phone pinged non-stop, friends texting in panic, strangers hurling slurs. She scrolled, horrified as the lie took root. At 7, Greg called, his voice tight. "Firm's cutting you loose, Aisha. Partners say you're a liability now. I fought them, but they wouldn't budge." Her stomach dropped, the toy car slipping from her hand to clatter on the kitchen floor. "What? Greg, you know I'm innocent." He sighed, heavy and helpless. "I do, they don't care. Optics matter more than truth here." She hung up, numb, the room spinning. She'd lost her job, her lifeline, just as she thought she'd reclaimed her life. Jamal pattered in, clutching the toy. "Mama, what's wrong?" She forced a smile, ruffling his hair. "Nothing, baby. Just a tough day." But the hits kept coming. The next morning, a letter slid under her door from Jamal's school, a curt note signed by the principal. "Due to recent events and safety concerns linked to your legal troubles, Jamal Carter is suspended indefinitely." Aisha's knees buckled. Safety concerns? She'd been cleared. She stormed to the school, the letter crumpled in her fist, and faced Principal Hargrove, a pinched woman with a fake smile. "Miss Carter, we can't risk parents pulling kids out over this. Your reputation's a problem." Aisha's voice shook with rage. My reputation? I was framed. You've got no right. Hargrove shrugged, unmoved. Take it up with the district, my hands are tied. Back home, Aisha sank onto the couch, Jamal beside her, his small hand in hers. The victory she'd tasted soured into ash. Deckers. Smear had ripped her job away, branded her a pariah, and now snatched her son's education. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors, their pity laced with fear. She flipped on the TV, hoping for distraction, only to see Decker's smug face. On the local news. We're cracking down on crime, he drawled, his eyes glinting. No one's above the law. The lie was a knife in her gut. She'd beaten the charges, but he'd turned her win into a public execution, painting her as the villain in a story she hadn't written. Her phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. Stay quiet or it gets worse. Aisha's blood ran cold. This wasn't random. Decker wasn't done. He'd taken her livelihood, her son's future, and now he was watching, waiting to strike harder. She hugged Jamal tight, his toy car pressed between them, and stared out the window at Oakland's restless streets. The fight she'd thought she'd won was a mirage, and the real war was just beginning. Drop a comment with number 1 if you think Aisha deserves justice after this dirty smear. Hit like if you're raging at Decker's power trip, and subscribe because you won't believe the payback coming his way. How far will Decker go to bury her, and can she claw her way back from this abyss? Aisha Carter sat at her kitchen table, the wood chipped and stained from years of spilled juice and hurried meals, her hands trembling around a chipped mug of cold tea. 3 days had passed since the school suspension letter, and the silence of her apartment gnawed at her. Jamal played quietly in the corner, pushing his new toy car across the floor, its wheels buzzing against the linoleum. She'd been fired, her name smeared across Oakland's underbelly, and now her son was a casualty of Chief Roland Decker's vendetta. The text from the unknown number still glowed in her mind. Stay quiet, or it gets worse. Fear coiled. Tight in her chest, but anger burned hotter. She couldn't let this stand. She needed proof, something to hit back with. Her phone buzzed and Latoya's name flashed on the screen. Aisha answered, her voice low. Hey girl, you okay? Latoya's tone was sharp, urgent. Aisha, we gotta talk. Meet me at the cafe on 35th. I've got something. Latoya was her rock, a barista at a hole-in-the-wall spot who'd grown up 2 blocks from Aisha, her quick wit matched only by her knack for sniffing out secrets. Aisha pulled on a hoodie, kissed Jamal's forehead, and left him with Mrs. Evans again. The elderly neighbor's kind eyes shadowed with worry. The walk to the cafe was tense, Oakland streets alive with the clatter of buses and the distant wail of sirens. She slipped into a booth across from Latoya, who slid a manila envelope across the table, her braids swinging as she leaned in. I called in a favor from my cousin at the precinct. He's a janitor, sees everything. This is from the arrest log. Aisha flipped it open, her pulse racing. A grainy photo showed officers Vance and Perry outside her cell, Vance slipping a small baggie into her purse before it was bagged as evidence. Her breath hitched. They planted it. That's why they cuffed me so fast. Latoya nodded, her jaw tight. Decker's orders. My cousin heard him chewing them out after your complaint. Said you needed to learn your place. Aisha's fists clenched, nails digging into her palms. This wasn't just profiling, it was a setup, a deliberate strike to crush her. She pulled a tiny recorder from her pocket, a cheap thing she'd grabbed from a pawn shop that morning. I'm getting them to say it. Latoya's eyes widened. You're crazy, girl. They'll kill you. Aisha shook her head, resolve hardening. They've already taken everything. I'm not losing my fight, too. That afternoon, she marched to the Oakland PD precinct, the concrete fortress looming like a beast, ready to swallow her whole. Her heart pounded as she slipped the recorder into her bra, its red light blinking faintly against her skin. She strode up to the front desk, demanding to see Vance and Perry. The sergeant, a bored man with a patchy beard, sneered but buzzed them out. Vance emerged first, his flinty eyes narrowing. What the hell you want, Carter? Perry loomed behind, cracking his knuckles. Aisha squared her shoulders, voice steady. I know you planted that baggie. I've got proof. Drop this now, or I go public. Vance laughed, a harsh bark. but Perry's face twitched, a flicker of nerves. "You're bluffing," Perry said, stepping closer. Aisha held her ground, recorder humming silently. "Am I? Tell me why Decker wanted me gone. So bad." Perry's mouth opened, then shut, but Vance leaned in, his breath sour. "You're a pest, that's why. Chief said you're trouble, so we made you trouble. That baggie was just the start." Aisha's blood roared in her ears. She had it. She spun on her heel, bolting before they could react, her sneakers slapping the pavement as she raced home. LaToya met her there, eyes wide as Aisha played the tape. Perry's voice crackled through clear as day. "Chief said you're trouble, so we made you trouble." LaToya whooped, grabbing her laptop. "I know a blogger, Jamil. He'll blast this." By midnight, the audio hit the web, tagged Oakland. PD caught framing innocent woman. It spread like wildfire, racking up 10,000 views by dawn. Aisha watched the numbers climb, her chest swelling with grim triumph. She'd exposed them. The next morning, her phone buzzed with texts from friends, strangers, even Greg, all buzzing about the viral clip. She dared to hope this was the knockout punch, but Decker wasn't a man to flinch. At noon, sirens screamed outside her apartment. She peeked through the blinds, heart sinking as a dozen cops swarmed the building, battering rams in hand. The door exploded inward, splintering wood across the floor. Jamal shrieked, diving behind the couch as Vance and Perry stormed in, guns drawn. "Aisha Carter, you're under arrest for possession with intent to distribute," Vance bellowed, yanking her arms behind her back. She twisted, spotting a baggie of white powder on her table, one she'd never seen. "That's not mine," she screamed, but Perry smirked, cuffing her wrists so tight they bled. "Found it right here, plain sight." The cops tore through her home, flipping mattresses, smashing Jamal's toy car underfoot. Neighbors gathered outside, phones up, but no one intervened. Aisha's eyes locked on Jamal, his small frame trembling, as a female officer pulled him away. "Mama!" he wailed, and her heart shattered. Vance leaned close, his voice a hiss. "You wanted to play. This is what you get." They dragged her to the cruiser, her body slamming against the frame as Perry landed a fist in her gut. She doubled over, gasping, the world tilting as blood trickled from her lip. The crowd murmured, some shouting, but the cops shoved them back. At the station they booked her again, the same sterile room, the same humiliating strip-down, but this time the charge was heavier, the air thicker with Decker's shadow. She sat in the cell, bruised and shaking, replaying the raid. They'd planted drugs, turned her counterattack into a deeper trap. The recorder was gone, snatched in the chaos, and with it her proof. She curled her fists, nails cutting crescents into her skin. She'd thought exposing them would free her, but Decker had flipped the board, doubling down with a lie so bold it crushed her breath. The cell door clanged, a guard tossing her a stale sandwich. She ignored it, staring at the wall where another woman scratched tally marks into the concrete. Her victory had been a spark, bright and brief, snuffed out by a system that wouldn't bend. Decker's retaliation wasn't just punishment, it was a message etched in her blood. Step out of line, and we'll bury you deeper. Aisha's mind raced, plotting her next move, but the weight of this new charge pressed down, a noose tightening around her neck. She'd hit them hard, and they'd hit back harder, dragging her son into the crossfire. The fight was alive, but the battlefield had shifted, and the stakes were climbing fast. Aisha Carter's world shrank to the 4 grey walls of her cell in Oakland County Jail, a concrete box that smelled of mold and despair. The clang of the steel door still echoed in her ears, a sound that sealed her off from Jamal, from freedom, from the life she'd fought to hold together. Her wrists burned where the cuffs had cut, and her stomach throbbed from Perry's punch during the raid. The planted drugs charge hung over her like a guillotine, a lie so heavy it crushed her breath. She slumped onto the metal bench, its cold biting through the thin jumpsuit they'd forced her into after stripping her bare again. The cell wasn't empty. 2 women stared at her from opposite corners, their eyes glinting with menace. One, a wiry figure with a shaved head and a scar slicing her cheek, cracked her knuckles. The other, heavy-set with matted hair falling over her face, muttered under her breath, her gaze darting like a cornered animal's. Aisha's pulse quickened. She knew that look. Trouble brewed fast in a place like this, and she was the new meat. Footsteps clacked outside and a guard, a lanky man with a pock-marked face, leaned against the bars. "Carter, huh? Chief Decker says you're special. Got friends waiting for you." His grin was a jagged slash, and he tapped his baton against the steel, a slow, deliberate rhythm. The scarred woman stood, stretching her arms while the muttering one edged closer. Aisha's gut twisted. Decker hadn't just locked her up. He'd paid these women to break her. The guard vanished, his laughter fading down the hall, and the cell turned into a cage match. Scarface lunged first, her fist slamming into Aisha's jaw with a wet crack. Pain exploded, stars bursting behind her eyes. But she ducked the next swing, instinct kicking in. The heavy-set one grabbed her hair, yanking her back, and Aisha felt strands rip free as she stumbled. "Decker says you're done," Scarface hissed, landing a kick to Aisha's ribs. The snap was audible, a sharp agony that stole her air. She crumpled, gasping, but fury surged through her. She wasn't going down like this. She rolled, snagging Scarface's ankle, and twisted hard. The woman crashed to the floor, cursing, and Aisha scrambled up, slamming her elbow into the heavy-set one's nose. Blood sprayed, a hot splatter across her jumpsuit, and the woman howled, staggering back. Scarface tackled her again, pinning her against the wall. But Aisha clawed at her face, nails raking skin. The fight ended as fast as it started, the guard's baton banging the bars. "Enough!" he roared, dragging Scarface off. Both inmates retreated, panting, their glares promising more. Aisha slid down, clutching her side, ribs screaming with every breath. She'd held her own, barely, and the others kept their distance now, a grudging respect in their silence. Blood trickled from her lip, mixing with sweat, but she wiped it away, her hands trembling. Hours later, a shadow fell across the cell. LaToya's voice whispered through the bars, urgent and low. "Aisha, you alive?" She'd slipped past the front desk, posing as a delivery girl with a tray of stale donuts for the guards. Aisha crawled to the bars, wincing. "Barely. They jumped me. Decker's orders." LaToya's eyes flared with rage. "I'm getting you out. Here." She slid a folded note through, her fingers brushing Aisha's. "Hide it. It's a plea to Nia Brooks, that reporter from the Tribune. She's got reach." Aisha tucked the paper into her sock, hope flickering. "Tell her everything." "Raid the beating, please." LaToya nodded, vanishing as a guard's boots echoed closer. Aisha unfolded the note later, scribbling with a smuggled pencil stub. "Decker's trying to kill me in here. Help." The next day, another guard, a quiet one with tired eyes, slipped her a burner phone, its screen cracked but glowing. 5 minutes, he muttered, turning away. Aisha dialed Nia Brooks, her voice hoarse. "I'm Aisha Carter. Oakland PD framed me, and now they're beating me in jail. Decker's behind it. Publish this." Nia's sharp intake of breath crackled through. "I've seen your blog post. This is bigger than I thought. Stay alive, Aisha. I'm on it." The call cut as the guard snatched the phone, but Aisha's chest swelled. By nightfall, Nia's article hit the Tribune's site. "Innocent woman brutalized in Oakland jail, Chief Decker's revenge." It detailed the arrest, the planted drugs, the cell attack, painting a picture of systemic rot. Aisha heard guards muttering about it outside, their voices tight with nerves. She'd struck again, her story spilling into the light, but Decker's shadow loomed larger. The next morning, the pockmarked guard returned, his grin gone, replaced by a cold stare. "You like talking, huh? Chief's got a fix for that." He unlocked the cell, yanking Aisha up by her arm, her ribs screaming as he dragged her down a dim corridor. The other inmates shrank back, eyes averted. He shoved her into a solitary cell, a coffin-sized hole with no windows, no bench, just damp concrete and a rusted drain. The door slammed shut, plunging her into blackness so thick she couldn't see her hands. Then came the water. A hose blasted through a slot, icy torrents soaking her jumpsuit, filling the cell ankle-deep. She gagged, the stench of mildew choking her, and pounded the walls, her fists slipping on wet stone. "Let me out," she screamed, but the only answer was the guard's chuckle fading away. Decker had turned her defiance into a death sentence. Hours blurred into a shivering nightmare. her teeth chattering, skin pruning as the water stayed. She sank to her knees, the cold seeping into her bones, and clawed at the wall, finding a jagged edge. With numb fingers, she scratched her alibi. Into the concrete. Wasn't there 14th St. Frame? It was all she had left, a desperate mark to prove she'd existed. Her mind teetered, visions of Jamal flickering in the dark, his small hands reaching for her. She clung to them, whispering his name, a lifeline against the void. Decker wanted her broken, silenced, but she'd fought off 2 inmates, gotten word out, carved her truth. She wasn't gone yet. The water sloshed as she shifted, her ribs a constant stab, but her eyes burned with a fire no flood could douse. She'd survived this somehow because giving up meant letting him win. Drop a comment with number 1 if you think Decker's gone. Too far with this torture. Hit like if Aisha's grit has you rooting for her, and subscribe because her next move will blow your mind. What happens when the whole city hears her cry? And will it be enough to crack Decker's iron grip? Aisha Carter shivered in the solitary cell, her knees pressed against her chest, the icy water lapping at her thighs. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating, broken only by the faint drip from the hose slot above. Her ribs ached, a dull throb pulsing with every shallow breath, and her scratched alibi on the wall felt like a fading echo of her fight. She'd lost track of time, hours bleeding into days, her body numb, but her mind razor-sharp. Nia Brooks's article had gone live, a lifeline thrown into the abyss, and Aisha clung to the hope it would pull her out. Footsteps sloshed outside, heavy and deliberate, and the door groaned open, spilling dim light across the flooded floor. 2 guards loomed, their silhouettes jagged against the fluorescence. The pockmarked one from before grabbed her arm, yanking her up with a grunt. "Time's up, Carter, you're out." Her legs buckled, weak from the cold, but she stumbled forward, water streaming from her jumpsuit. "Out where?" she rasped, voice raw. The second guard, a squat man with a buzz, Kat smirked. "Bail, someone's got your back." They dragged her through the jail's maze, her soaked sneakers squeaking on the tile until they reached processing. Her clothes, stiff and wrinkled, were tossed at her in a plastic bag. She changed in a cramped stall, peeling off the drenched jumpsuit, her skin prickling as warmth crept back. The clerk shoved a clipboard at her, muttering about signatures, and then she was free, stepping into Oakland's dusk, the air crisp against her face. LaToya waited outside, her beat-up hatchback idling at the curb, exhaust puffing into the twilight. She leapt out, eyes wide, and pulled Aisha into a fierce hug. "Girl, you're a ghost." Nia's piece lit a fire. Protests all over downtown. Banging on the jail gates. Judge had to let you go. Aisha's chest swelled, tears stinging as she hugged back. "Jamal," LaToya grinned, opening the car door. "With Mrs. Evans, safe." The ride home blurred past, Oakland's neon signs smearing into streaks of color. Aisha's heart raced as she climbed the stairs to her apartment, the familiar creak of the wood abalm. Jamal rushed her at the threshold, his small body slamming into hers, his sobs muffled against her shirt. "Mama, I thought you were gone." She knelt, cradling his face, her own tears falling. "I'm here, baby. I'm not leaving you." Mrs. Evans hovered nearby, her wrinkled hands clasped, relief softening her gaze. Aisha tucked Jamal into bed that night. His toy car clutched tight and sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall. The protests had worked. Nia's words had reached the streets, forced the system's hand. She'd won, hadn't she? For the first time in days, she exhaled, the weight lifting if only slightly. She dared to believe the nightmare might end here, that Decker's grip had slipped. But Chief Roland Decker wasn't a man to bow to crowds. He paced his office. The precincts hum a distant drone beyond his closed door. The protests infuriated him, a swarm of ants daring to bite the lion. Nia's article had painted him as a tyrant, and Aisha's release was a slap he couldn't stomach. He crushed a styrofoam cup in his fist, coffee splattering across his desk, and dialed a contact he kept buried deep. "She's out. Fix it." The line clicked dead, and Decker smirked, his plan already rolling. By morning, Aisha woke to sunlight streaming through her blinds. a rare quiet settling over the apartment. She brewed coffee, the ritual grounding her, and checked her phone. Texts flooded in, friends cheering her release, but one stood out. Greg Tanner. "Heard you're back. Stay low. Decker's pissed." She frowned, unease prickling her spine, but shoved it down. She'd beaten him once. She could rest, just for today. That evening she took Jamal to the park, his laughter as he raced the toy car a fleeting joy. She sat on a bench watching him when tires crunched behind her. She turned, expecting LaToya, but froze. A black SUV idled at the curb, its tinted windows glinting like predator eyes. The door swung open, and 3 men in tactical vests spilled out, ATF badges flashing. "Aisha Carter!" one bellowed, a burly figure with a crew cut, his gun raised. "Hands up now!" Her heart stopped. She leapt up, shoving Jamal behind her, his toy clattering to the grass. "What is this?" she demanded, voice shaking. The agent stepped closer, his face a mask of cold authority. "Search found a firearm in your vehicle. You're under arrest for illegal possession and trafficking." Aisha's mind reeled. "I don't own a gun. My car's been here all day." But they didn't listen. The second agent, a wiry man with a scar across his brow, yanked her arms back, cuffs snapping tight. Jamal screamed, lunging forward, but the third agent scooped him up, pinning his flailing arms. "Mama!" he wailed, tears streaming, and Aisha thrashed, desperation clawing her throat. "Let him go, he's a kid." The burly agent smirked, holstering his weapon. "Tell it to the feds." They dragged her to the SUV, her sneakers scraping pavement, and shoved her inside. Through the window, she saw Jamal sobbing in a neighbor's arms, Mrs. Evans rushing out, her face crumpled in horror. The engine roared and the park vanished, Oakland's streets blurring into a nightmare. At the station they processed her again, the routine a sick déjà vu, but this time the charge was federal. The ATF claimed they'd found a loaded pistol under her car's passenger seat, serial number scratched off, a clear intent to distribute. Aisha sat in a new cell, cleaner but colder, her bail revoked by a judge she'd never met. Her mind raced. Decker had done this. The protests had bruised his ego, so he'd planted a gun, called in bigger dogs. She'd tasted freedom for less than a day, a cruel tease before this deeper plunge. The TV in the guard's booth flickered, on Decker's face filling the screen during a press conference. "Aisha Carter's a career criminal," he drawled, his voice smooth as oil. "Released by mistake, but we've got her now. Oakland's safer for it." The lie was brazen, his smirk a taunt through the glass. Aisha's fists clenched, nails digging into her palms until blood welled. She'd rallied the city, forced her release, only to be slammed back harder. The ATF's involvement meant Decker's reach stretched beyond local badges, into a federal machine that didn't blink at her innocence. Her ribs still ached, her son's cries echoed in her skull, and now she faced years, maybe decades, for a crime she'd never dreamed of. She paced the cell, 5 steps wall to wall, her shadow stretching under the harsh light. The protests had been her win, a spark of justice, but Decker had doused it with a flood of lies. She'd thought she'd broken free, reunited with Jamal, reclaimed her life. That hope lay shattered now, replaced by a steel resolve. She'd fight this too somehow, because giving up meant losing everything. The cell door rattled as a guard tossed her a blanket, his eyes avoiding hers. She wrapped it around her shoulders, the wool scratching her skin, and stared at the ceiling, plotting. Decker had escalated, turned her into a federal target, but she wasn't buried yet. The war was on, and the next blow would come swift and brutal. Aisha Carter sat on the edge of her bunk in the federal holding cell, the blanket draped over her shoulders, doing little to fend off the chill seeping through the concrete. The air smelled of antiseptic and rust, a sterile prison that felt more like a tomb than the county jail's chaos. Her ribs pulsed with pain, a reminder of the beating she'd endured, and her wrists bore fresh bruises from the ATF's cuffs. The planted gun charge loomed, a federal noose tightening around her neck, orchestrated by Chief Roland Decker to snuff out her fleeting victory. She'd tasted freedom for a day, held Jamal close, only to have it ripped away by a lie so bold it shook her faith in justice. The cell's silence was broken by a soft tap at the bars. A guard stood there, his uniform crisp, his face lined with exhaustion rather than cruelty. Marcus, his name tag read, a black man in his 40s with grey, flecking his temples. His eyes darted down the hall before he slipped a small object through the bars, a USB drive no bigger than a thumbnail. "Take it," he whispered, voice low. "I'm done watching Decker ruin folks like you." Aisha's fingers closed around it, her pulse spiking. "What's this?" Marcus glanced back again, sweat beading on his brow. "Logs from the precinct. Proof he's been planting evidence for years. Your gun's just the latest." She tucked the drive into her sock, the cold metal pressing against her ankle. "Why risk this?" His jaw tightened. "Saw my sister go through the same. Didn't speak up then. Won't stay quiet now." Footsteps echoed, and he vanished, leaving Aisha with a lifeline she couldn't yet use. She paced the cell, 5 steps one way, 5 back, her mind racing. Decker's corruption ran deeper than she'd imagined, a web of fabricated cases stretching across Oakland. If she could get this out, it might topple him. Hours later, the same guard passed by, tossing her a sandwich. She caught it, then whispered, "LaToya, get it to her." Marcus nodded, barely perceptible, and moved on. That night she lay awake, the driver's secret burning against her skin. She needed a way to reach the outside. The next morning, a different guard, a woman with a sour face, escorted her to a shower block. Aisha spotted a janitor mopping nearby, his cap pulled low. She faked a stumble, brushing past him, and slipped the drive into his cart, mouthing, "LaToya." He blinked, then nodded, shoving the cart away. She held her breath, praying it worked. By afternoon, LaToya had it. She'd been staking out the jail's visitor lot, waiting for any sign, when the janitor dropped the drive into her palm with a muttered, "From Carter." LaToya sped home, her hands shaking as she plugged it into her laptop. Files spilled. Across the screen, dates, names, photos of planted drugs, guns, even cash, all tied to Decker's signature. Aisha's case was there, a memo from Decker to Vance. "Make it stick this time." LaToya's eyes blazed. She dialed Nia Brooks, the reporter who'd already amplified Aisha's story. "Nia, you won't believe this. I've got proof Decker's—" "Dirty years of it." Nia's voice crackled with excitement. "Send it now." Within hours, the Tribune ran the bombshell. Oakland PD chief exposed. Decades of evidence tampering. The USB's logs laid Decker bare, a kingpin of corruption hiding behind a badge. Social media erupted, hashtags like "Justice for Aisha" trending nationwide. Aisha heard it first from a guard's radio, the static cutting through her cell's quiet. "Breaking news, Chief Roland Decker under fire." Her lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. She'd struck deep, a wound he couldn't ignore. But Decker wasn't a man to bleed quietly. He sat in his office, the precinct a hive of panic, his desk littered with printouts of Nia's article. His phone buzzed with calls from brass, politicians, even the mayor, all demanding answers. He slammed it down, shattering the screen, and roared for his lieutenant. "Find the leak," he bellowed, veins bulging in his neck. His spies traced it fast. Marcus, the guard who'd turned. By dusk, Decker had him cornered in the precinct lot, a staged investigation already scripted. Classified intel. "Breach!" Decker barked as Vance and Perry cuffed Marcus, slamming him against a cruiser. "You're done." Marcus spat blood, his lips split from Perry's fist. "You're the one," finished Decker. The beating was quick, brutal, ribs cracking under boots before they hauled him off, fired and disgraced. Decker wasn't satisfied. He stormed back inside, his rage a living thing, and dialed another. Contact. "Carter's behind this. Make her pay." That night, Aisha's cell door swung open, the pockmarked guard from county jail glaring down. "You're a real pain," he snarled, grabbing her arm. She stumbled, ribs flaring as he dragged her to a maintenance closet. The stench hit first, sewage thick and rancid, then the flood. He shoved her in, locking the door, and a pipe overhead burst, spewing filth across her body. She gagged, slipping in the muck, her jumpsuit soaking through as the brown tide rose to her knees. "Talk all you want," he called through the slot. "No one's listening now." The door clanged shut, leaving her choking in the dark. The USB's victory drowned in Decker's retaliation. She pounded the walls, her fists slick with grime, but the sound was swallowed by the slosh of waste. Her throat burned, vomit rising as she fought to breathe. Decker had turned her strike into a nightmare, punishing her for daring to expose him. She slid down, the filth pooling around her, and coughed, her lungs searing. Marcus was gone, beaten, for helping her, and now she was trapped, a target painted brighter than ever. The article had shaken Decker's throne, but he'd lashed back with a vengeance that left her drowning. She pressed her forehead to the wall, the cold concrete grounding. Her and whispered Jamal's name a tether to her will. She'd gotten the truth out, lit a fire across Oakland, but Decker had doused it with a flood of cruelty. Her ribs ached, her body shook, but her eyes narrowed, defiance flickering through the haze. She'd survived the beating, the water, and now this. She'd find a way because Decker's move only proved how scared he was. The cell stank of his fear as much as the sewage, and Aisha wasn't done fighting. Drop a comment with number 1 if you think Marcus deserves a medal for risking it all. Hit like if Decker's sewage trap has you boiling, and subscribe because Aisha's next stand will flip this game upside down. Will the city's rage finally break Decker, or has he just locked her in a deeper cage? Aisha Carter stood in the courthouse holding pen, her jumpsuit crusted with dried sewage, the stench clinging to her like a second skin. Her ribs throbbed, a constant ache from the jailhouse beating, and her wrists chafed under the cuffs, linking her to a chain gang of other detainees. The federal gun charge loomed, a fabricated noose Decker had tightened after her USB leak shook his empire. She'd spent 3 days in that filth-flooded closet, coughing up grime, before they dragged her out for trial. Her reflection in a scratched steel mirror showed a woman hollowed out but unbowed, eyes burning with a fire no cell could quench. The bailiff called her name, voice flat, and marched her into the Oakland courthouse's main chamber. The room buzzed, packed with faces she knew and some she didn't. LaToya sat in the gallery, her braids pulled tight, fists clenched in her lap. Nia Brooks perched nearby, notepad in hand, her sharp gaze flicking between Aisha and the judge. Protesters filled the rows, their signs banned but their whispers loud, a hum of fury sparked by Nia's exposé. Aisha's public defender, Samir Patel, a skinny rookie with sweat beading on his brow, shuffled papers beside her. Judge Evelyn Holt, a stern woman with silver hair pinned tight, peered down from the bench, her gavel resting like a loaded gun. The trial began, a slow grind of procedure that felt like a trap snapping shut. The prosecutor, a slick man named Darren Voss with a pinstripe suit and a predator's smile, laid out the ATF's case. A pistol found in Aisha's car, her history of defiance proving intent. Samir countered, voice cracking but firm, presenting the USB logs Marcus had risked everything to leak. These show Chief Decker's pattern of planting evidence, Your Honor. My client's innocent, targeted for exposing corruption. He clicked, a remote projecting grainy scans onto a screen. Memos, timestamps, Decker's scrawled initials ordering Vance and Perry to make it stick. The gallery murmured, a ripple of shock, and Judge Holt's eyes narrowed, her pen scratching notes. Aisha's chest tightened with hope. This could work. Decker took the stand next, his bulk filling the witness box, his uniform crisp despite, the sweat glistening on his neck. Voss lobbed soft questions, and Decker spun a tale of Aisha as a mastermind, a radical who'd bribed Marcus for fake logs. She's a threat to Oakland, he growled, his voice a low rumble. I'd never tamper with evidence. That guard's a liar bought off by her crew. Aisha's fists clenched, nails digging into her palms. The lie was bold, his smirk a taunt, but Samir leapt up. Objection! No proof of bribery exists. Holt sustained it, her frown deepening, and Aisha dared to think the tide was turning. Then chaos erupted. A shattering crash split the air, glass exploding inward as a Molotov cocktail arced through a side window. Flames roared across the prosecutor's table, papers curling into ash, and screams filled the room. Aisha ducked, the heat licking her face, as bailiffs tackled her to the floor, their knees grinding into her spine. She did this, Decker bellowed, leaping from the stand, pointing at her as smoke billowed. "Her radicals attacked us." The gallery erupted, protesters shouting denials, Latoya's voice cutting through. "That's a lie!" Naya scribbled, furiously dodging a falling chair. Voss coughed, waving off medics, while Judge Holt banged her gavel, her shouts lost in the pandemonium. Aisha twisted under the bailiff's weight, her ribs screaming, and caught Decker's eye. He grinned, a predator savoring the kill. The fire was no accident. He'd staged it, turned her evidence into a circus, pinned her as a terrorist. Caught, recessed, the blaze doused by sprinklers that soaked the room in cold drizzle. Aisha was hauled back to the holding pen, her jumpsuit dripping, the cuffs biting deeper. Hours later, the bailiffs returned, their faces grim. "Moving you, one," grunted, dragging her to a van. She stumbled in, the steel bench jarring her bruised body, and the doors slammed shut. The ride was silent, Oakland's streets a blur through tinted slits, until they reached a maximum security wing, a fortress of razor wire and floodlights. They shoved her into a new cell, smaller, colder, with a single bulb buzzing overhead. The door locked with a thud, and a guard tossed her a dry jumpsuit, muttering, "Terrorism suspect now. No bail." Aisha sank onto the cot, the fabric rough against her skin, her mind reeling. The trial had been her chance, the USB her weapon, and Decker had torched it all with one flung bottle. She'd seen the judge, waver, felt the gallery's support only to have it snatched away in a blaze of lies. He'd painted her as the mastermind. Her fight twisted into a threat, and now she was buried deeper, a max security ghost. The cell's walls pressed in, the air thick with disinfectant and defeat, but her eyes burned with a stubborn glow. She'd survived the beating, the flood, the setup. This was just another blow, heavier, sharper, but not the last. Decker thought he'd won, turned her evidence into ashes, but she'd heard the crowd's roar, seen Nia's pen racing. The fight wasn't dead. She curled her fists, nails cutting into her palms, and replayed the chaos, the fire, Decker's grin, the bailiff's grip. He'd escalated, thrown a match on her hope, but she'd find a spark in this darkness. The Max Wing was a new battlefield, its silence a lie hiding the next strike. She stood, pacing the tiny space, 3 steps one way, 3 back, her shadow, stretching under the flickering light. Jamal's face flashed in her mind, his screams from the park echoing, and she whispered his name, a vow to keep going. Decker had turned her trial into a war zone, but wars weren't won in one day. She'd strike back somehow, because letting him bury her here meant losing everything. The bulb buzzed louder, a guard's boots clacked past, and Aisha sat again. Plotting. The courthouse had burned, her freedom with it, but the truth still smoldered out there, waiting for her to fan it into flame. Aisha Carter curled into the corner of her max security cell, the cot's thin mattress doing nothing to ease the chill seeping from the concrete. The bulb overhead buzzed, casting a sickly yellow glow that flickered like her hope. Her jumpsuit hung loose, stained with the ghosts of sewage and sweat, and her ribs screamed with every breath, a lingering gift from the jailhouse beating. The terrorism label Decker had pinned on her after the courthouse fire weighed heavier than the steel, door locking her in. No bail, no calls, just silence, and the distant clang of guards patrolling Oakland's most fortified wing. She'd been here 3 days, maybe 4, time blurring in the windowless void. Food came once a day, a grey sludge shoveled onto a tray, barely enough to keep her stomach from gnawing itself. The guards were Decker's puppets, their eyes glinting with malice as they delivered her punishment. Yesterday one had accidentally spilled her water, leaving her parched lips cracking like dry earth. Today, another kicked her tray across the floor, the sludge splattering the wall, and laughed as he walked away. "Terrorists don't eat," he'd sneered, his baton tapping a rhythm of hate. Aisha scraped what she could from the concrete, swallowing pride with the grit, her body weakening but her mind sharpening. She'd survived worse, she told herself, but the beatings started that night. 2 guards burst in, their boots echoing, like thunder. The first, a hulking man with a shaved head, grabbed her by the throat, slamming her against the wall. "Decker says hi," he grunted, his fist crashing into her gut. Pain flared white-hot and she doubled over, gasping. The second, wiry with a snake tattoo curling up his arm, kicked her legs out, sending her sprawling. Her cheek hit the floor. Blood pooling from a split lip, and they took turns, boots thudding into her sides, her back, her ribs cracking anew. She curled tight, protecting her face, her groans swallowed by their laughter. They left her there, a crumpled heap, the door slamming shut. She lay still, breath shallow, counting the pulses of pain to stay conscious. She wouldn't die here. Not yet. The next day she dragged herself up Sri Lanka's most fortified wing. She'd been here 3 days, maybe 4, time blurring in the windowless void. Food came once a day, a grey sludge shoveled onto a tray, barely enough to keep her stomach from gnawing itself. The guards were Decca's puppets, their eyes glinting with malice as they delivered her punishment. Yesterday, one had accidentally spilled her water, leaving her parched, lips cracking, like dry earth. Today another kicked her tray across the floor, the sludge splattering the wall, and laughed as he walked away. "Terrorists don't eat," he'd sneered, his baton tapping a rhythm of hate. Aisha scraped what she could from the concrete, swallowing pride with the grit, her body weakening but her mind sharpening. She'd survived worse, she told herself, but the beating started that night. 2 guards burst in, their boots echoing like thunder. The first, a hulking man with a shaved head, grabbed her by the throat, slamming her against the wall. "Decca says hi," he grunted, his fist crashing into her gut. Pain flared white-hot and she doubled over, gasping. The second, wiry with a snake tattoo curling up his arm, kicked her legs out, sending her sprawling. Her cheek hit the floor. Blood pooling from a split lip, and they took turns, boots thudding into her sides, her back, her ribs cracking anew. She curled tight, protecting her face, her groans swallowed by their laughter. They left her there, a crumpled heap, the door slamming shut. She lay still, breath shallow, counting the pulses of pain to stay conscious. She wouldn't die here. Not yet. The next day she dragged herself up, every move a knife in her side, and carved a shank from a spoon she'd hidden, its edge jagged but lethal. She gripped it, ready to fight, ready to die if it came to that. Her spirit was bruised, but unbroken, a coal glowing in the dark. Latoya hadn't given up either. She'd slipped into the jail's visitor roster, posing as a distant cousin, and bribed a guard with her last $50 to smuggle a burner phone. It slid under Aisha's door at dusk, a scratched relic with 1 bar of signal. Aisha snatched it, hands trembling, and dialed Latoya. "I'm dying in here," she whispered, voice a rasp. "Decca's killing me." Latoya's breath hitched. "Hang on, girl, I've got Nia, we're pushing." Aisha typed a plea to the ACLU, fingers fumbling. "Decca's torturing me. Max security. Innocent. Help." She sent it, the phone dying as the guard's boots neared. She shoved it under the cot, heart pounding. By morning, Nia had it online, a raw audio file of Aisha's voice trending nationwide. "They beat me daily, starve me. Decca wants me dead." Oakland exploded, protests swelling outside. The jail, chants of "Free Aisha" shaking the razor wire. Aisha heard it faintly, a roar through the walls, and clung to it, her shank pressed to her palm. Decca's fury boiled over. He stormed the mayor's office, slamming fists on desks, but the pressure mounted. Then he played his ace. He dialed. Homeland Security, his voice ice. "Carter's a terrorist. Her pleas a coded threat. Shut it down." Hours later, DHS raided her cell. 4 agents in black vests burst in, tasers crackling. Aisha swung her shank, slashing one across the arm, blood arcing, but they swarmed her. Electricity jolted through her, a scream ripping free as her body convulsed. She hit the floor, twitching, Jamal's photo slipping from her jumpsuit, landing in the filth. They dragged her up, her limbs limp, and hauled her out, the photo left behind. Decca had branded her a domestic terrorist, her viral plea twisted into a lie that buried her deeper. She'd fought, carved her way out of despair, only to face a federal storm that stripped her last shred of hope. Post a comment with number 1 if you think Aisha's shank move was pure courage. Hit like if Decca's DHS play has you fuming. And subscribe because her next twist will shred your expectations. Can Aisha survive the Fed's wrath? Or has Decca finally crushed her? Spirit? Aisha Carter slumped against the wall of a sterile interrogation room, her body a map of bruises and burns from the DHS taser strike. The max security cell had been hell, but this new prison, a grey box with a steel table and a one-way mirror, felt like a deeper grave. Her jumpsuit hung off her frame, torn at the shoulder, and her ribs pulsed with a pain so constant it was background noise. The shank she'd carved was gone, confiscated when the agents dragged her out, leaving her defenseless. Jamal's photo, her last tether, lay lost in the filth of her old cell, and the thought of it twisted her gut worse than any beating. The door creaked open, and Agent Torres stepped in, a lean man in a black suit with a buzz cut and eyes like polished stone. He carried a file folder, dropping it on the table with a soft thud, and sat across from her, his posture relaxed but predatory. "Aisha Carter," he said, voice smooth. "You've caused quite a stir. Protests, articles, trending hashtags, impressive." She glared, her split lips stinging as she spoke. "I'm innocent. Decker framed me. You know it." Torres leaned back, folding his arms. "Maybe, but you're in deep now. Terrorism's no joke. Life in a black site, no trial, no nothing. Unless you help yourself." Her pulse quickened, suspicion flaring. "What do you want?" He slid the folder toward her, flipping it open to a typed confession. "Sign this. Lesser charges, obstruction, resisting arrest. You're out in 5 years, back with your kid. We dropped the terror rap." Aisha's breath caught, the offer dangling like a lifeline. 5 years, not life. Jamal's face flashed in her mind, his small hands clutching that toy car. She could endure 5 years, couldn't she? Her fingers brushed the paper, trembling, but her gut screamed trap. "Why let me go? DHS doesn't play nice." Torres shrugged, a faint smirk tugging his lips. "Public pressure's a bitch. You're a martyr out there. Easier to cut a deal than fight the mob." She studied him, his calm too perfect, his words too neat. Decker's shadow loomed behind this, a puppet string she couldn't see. "And if I don't?" His smirk faded. "You disappear. No one finds you, not even your boy." The threat landed like a blade, slicing her resolve. She pictured Jamal alone, waiting, growing up without her, and her throat closed. "Give me a pen," she rasped, hating herself. Torres slid one over, his eyes glinting with triumph. She gripped it, the ink hovering over the line, when a memory flared. Decker's grin after the courthouse fire. This was his game, a softer cage to shut her up. She dropped the pen, shoving the folder back. "No deal, you're lying." Torres sighed, standing. "Your funeral." He left, the door locking with a click, and Aisha sank back, dread pooling in her chest. She'd called his bluff, but the cost was coming. Hours later, Nia Brooks' voice crackled through a radio in the hall, a faint lifeline. "Leaked DHS. Confession rocks Oakland. Aisha Carter admits guilt, sources say." Aisha's blood froze. Torres had forged it, released a fake anyway, twisting her refusal into surrender. By morning, the news hit the streets. Protests fizzled, LaToya's texts stopped. Even Greg's support vanished. The city turned, her allies doubting, her martyr glow dimming. She'd rejected the deal, only to lose everything it promised. Decker struck harder that night. A guard burst in, face blank, and barked, "Your kid's in custody, protective services, trouble at school." Aisha lunged, slamming fists against the steel door. "Jamal's safe. You can't take him." The guard shrugged, walking off. "Chief's orders, he's gone." Her screams echoed raw and useless as the truth sank in. Decker had snatched Jamal, a dagger to her soul. She collapsed, sobbing, the room spinning. She'd held out, kept her truth, but lost her son. Days later, Torres returned, his suit pristine, his smirk wider. "Sign now, Aisha. Jamal comes back. Last chance." Her hands shook, tears streaking her face. She'd fought so hard, exposed, so much only to break here. "Where is he?" she whispered. Torres leaned close. "Safe. For now, sign, and you'll see." She grabbed the pen, her spirit cracking, and scrawled her name, the ink a blood stain on her fight. Torres snatched, the paper grinning. Smart girl. They marched her to a new room, A holding cell with a cot, and she waited, pacing, praying. Hours stretched. Then Torres reappeared, alone. "Jamal?" she asked, voice breaking. He laughed, cold and sharp. "Gone. Foster." "System. Deal's done, but he's not yours anymore." Aisha's knees buckled, a wail tearing free. She'd signed for nothing, a lie that stole her last piece. Torres tossed her a file. "Federal detainee, indefinite hold. Welcome to limbo." The door slammed, locking her in, her sobs bouncing off the walls. She'd resisted once, kept her soul, but Decca's puppet had flipped it, taking Jamal and chaining her to a void. She curled on the cot, fists pounding the thin mattress, her cries a requiem for everything lost. The fake confession had gutted her support. The deal had gutted her hope, and now she was a ghost, no son, no fight, just a shell in Decca's grip. She'd thought she could outlast him, but he'd played the long game, striking her heart when her guard was down. The cell's silence swallowed her, the bulb flickering like her fading will. She'd signed, broken, and still lost. Decca's victory was total, a slow bleed that left her alive but empty, a federal pawn in a game she couldn't win. Aisha Carter lay on the cot in her federal holding cell, the thin blanket doing nothing to warm the chill that had settled into her bones. Her body was a canvas of pain, ribs cracked, skin mottled with bruises from beatings and tasers. Her spirit, a flickering ember after signing Torres' fake deal. Jamal was gone, swallowed by the foster system, a wound deeper than any Decca's goons had dealt. The forged confession had turned Oakland against her. Protests fading, LaToya silent, her fight reduced to ash. The cell's grey walls closed in. A tomb for a woman who dared to defy a system rigged to crush her. She traced the scars on her knuckles, reminders of the shank she'd wielded, now lost like everything else. Sleep eluded her, the bulb's hum a constant taunt, but she refused to break completely. Decca had won, but she wasn't dead yet. Footsteps echoed late that night, soft and cautious, not the heavy stomp of guards. A shadow paused at her door, a janitor in a faded jumpsuit, his face lined with years of quiet rebellion. Tyrell, and this ex-cop who'd quit after seeing too much, met her eyes through the bars. "Heard your story," he whispered, slipping a folded paper through. "Vent map. Get out." Aisha snatched it, her pulse spiking. The sketch showed ducts snaking through. The secret DHS facility, a maze of steel and shadow. "Why?" she hissed. Tyrell's jaw tightened. "Decca screwed my brother too. This is payback." He vanished, his mop sloshing down the hall, leaving her with a lifeline. She unfolded the map, memorizing turns and drops, her mind racing. Escape was a long shot, but staying meant death, slow or fast. She waited until the guards' shift change, their chatter fading, then pried at the vent cover above her cot. It popped loose, screws clattering, and she hauled herself up, ribs, screaming as she squeezed into the tight shaft. The metal scraped her skin, dust choking her lungs, but she crawled, elbows digging, the map burned into her brain. Sweat stung her eyes, her breath shallow, but she pushed on, inching through filth and darkness. After an hour, maybe more, she kicked out a grate, tumbling into a basement reeking of oil and rust. Oakland's underbelly sprawled below the facility, a warren of pipes and forgotten rooms. She landed hard, pain flaring, but stood, free for the first time in weeks. The city pulsed above, alive and indifferent, and Aisha stumbled through the shadows, her jumpsuit torn, her body a wreck. She needed Nia Brooks, the one voice still fighting. She found a payphone in an alley, its glass cracked, and punched in Nia's burner number, coins scavenged from a dumpster. "Nia, it's me," she rasped when the line clicked. How Decker's winning?" Nia's gasp crackled through. "Aisha, holy hell, where are you?" A meet was set, a dive bar on 12th Street, and Aisha limped there, hiding in a hoodie Tyrell's map had led her to in a storage closet. The bar stank of stale beer and regret, neon flickering over sticky tables. Nia waited in a booth, her notepad scarred with ink, her eyes wide as Aisha slid in. "You look like death," Nia said, shoving a water across. Aisha gulped it, throat raw. Decker took Jamal, forged my confession. I need to hit back. Nia nodded, pulling a laptop from her bag. Got a tip. Decker's emails, DHS orders. To erase you. If we hack their server, it's over. Aisha's fists clenched, hope flickering. Do it. Nia's fingers flew, cracking into a back door she'd bought from a whistleblower. Files spilled out. Decker to Torres. Eliminate. Carter, any means. DHS memos tagging her as expendable. Aisha's blood boiled, the proof a Molotov in her hands. Broadcast it, she said, voice steel. Nia hesitated. They'll hunt us harder. Aisha's eyes burned. They already are. They uploaded it to a pirate site, raw and unfiltered. The emails lighting up screens across Oakland by dawn. The city ignited, riots flaring, precinct windows shattering under bricks and rage. Aisha watched from the bar's TV, fists tight, a grim smile breaking through. She'd escaped, struck deep, turned Decker's lies into fuel. But he wasn't done. That night, a blast rocked downtown, a protest rally bombed, flames swallowing dozens. Sirens wailed, news flashing Decker's face. Aisha Carter's terror cell strikes again, he declared, pinning the dead on her. Her stomach dropped. The bar's patrons turning, eyes narrowing. Nia grabbed her arm. He's framing you for this, we've got to move. Aisha's mind spun. She'd exposed him, lit the fuse, only to have him twist it into mass murder. America's most wanted. Overnight. Her face plastered on every channel, a bounty on her head. She'd crawled from the vents, found Nia, landed a blow, but Decker had countered with carnage, burying her deeper. They fled the bar, slipping into Oakland's shadows, the city a tinderbox of fury and fear. Aisha's legs shook, her body failing, but her will held. The emails had shaken Decker's throne, but he'd burned lives to keep it, making her the scapegoat. She gripped Nia's hand, the night swallowing them, her breath ragged. We can't stop, she said, voice a growl. He's scared. That's why he did this. Nia nodded, her jaw tight. We'll find a way. They vanished into the alleys, hunted. The riots a chaotic shield. Aisha's escape had been a spark, the hack a blaze. But Decker's bomb was a wildfire, consuming her name, her fight. She'd risen from the grave, only to be cast as its monster, a fugitive in a war she hadn't started. Her ribs ached, her heart heavier, but she ran, the city's pulse matching hers, a beat of defiance in a world turned against her. Aisha Carter crouched in the shadow of a rusted radio tower, the wind whipping through Oakland's industrial edge, carrying the distant roar of riots tearing the city apart. Her body was a wreck, ribs cracked, skin scraped raw from the vent. Fair escape. Her jumpsuit a tattered shroud barely clinging to her frame. Nia Brooks knelt beside her, laptop balanced on a crate, fingers trembling as she patched into a pirate signal. The emails they'd hacked, Decker's orders to erase Aisha, had hit the web hours ago, sparking chaos, but his counterstrike had been apocalyptic, a bomb at a protest, dozens dead, pinned on her. She was America's most wanted now, a terrorist, in the eyes of a nation that once rallied for her. The tower loomed above, a skeletal giant patched with graffiti, its signals strong enough to blast their truth citywide. Aisha's breath rasped, her eyes scanning the dark for Decker's hunters. This ends tonight, she muttered, voice rough as gravel. Nia nodded, plugging in. Live in 5. The broadcast crackled on, Nia's voice cutting through static. Oakland, it's Nia Brooks with Aisha Carter. Decker's a liar. Those emails, his playbook to kill her, the bombing, his setup. Aisha leaned in, her words raw. I'm no terrorist. He took my son, framed me, bombed you to bury me. Here's the proof. The screen flickered, Decker's memos scrolling for all to see. The city's pulse shifted, precincts burning as the truth sank in. Aisha's chest tightened, a flicker of triumph flaring. She'd escaped, hacked his secrets, and now Oakland roared back. But Decker wasn't a man to watch his kingdom crumble. Sirens screamed closer, tires screeching as a SWAT van skidded into the lot below. A dozen figures in black spilled out, rifles glinting under floodlights, Decker at their helm, his bulk unmistakable. Carter, he bellowed, voice a cannon shot. You're done. Aisha's heart pounded, her hand slipping to the shank. She'd scavenged from a dumpster, its edge dulled but sharp enough. Nia typed faster, uploading the last file, but a bullet shattered the laptop, sparks flying as she screamed. Aisha yanked her down, the crate splintering under gunfire. "Run!" she hissed, but Decker's team fanned out, cutting off escape. Aisha lunged, shank flashing, aiming for Decker's throat. He sidestepped, meaty fist slamming her jaw, sending her sprawling. Pain exploded, blood flooding her mouth, but she rolled. Slashing his calf, he roared, stumbling, and she scrambled up, rage fueling her. Nia darted for cover, but a SWAT officer fired, the shot tearing through her chest. She crumpled, blood pooling, her notepad skidding across gravel. "Nia!" Aisha's scream ripped free, grief ablade in her gut. Decker laughed, a guttural sound, and kicked Nia's body aside. "One down, Carter, you're next," Aisha charged, shank sinking into his arm, twisting as he howled. He grabbed her throat, lifting her off the ground, his grip crushing. Should have stayed quiet. He snarled, blood dripping from his wounds. She clawed his face, nails raking flesh, and kneed his groin, breaking free as he doubled over. The SWAT team closed in, but the sky hummed, a new threat descending. DHS drones buzzed overhead, red lights blinking, their cameras locked on her. Aisha froze, Decker's grin widening. "Told you I'd win." Tasers fired from above, barbs piercing her back, electricity jolting through her. She convulsed, collapsing beside Nia's corpse, the shank slipping from her hand. Decker loomed, wiping blood from his cheek, his laugh a death knell. "Game. It's over." Agents rappelled down, cuffing her, dragging her to a van as the drones circled like vultures. Her body screamed, vision blurring, but she heard Jamal's voice, faint and desperate, from the crowd beyond the fence. "Mama!" he yelled, held back by feds, his small frame thrashing. Aisha's eyes locked on him, tears cutting through the grime on her face. She smiled, a broken, defiant curve, thinking she'd lost it all. Freedom, Nia, her name, until the van door slammed shut. They drove her to the courthouse, the same granite beast where this nightmare had peaked, now swarming with press and protesters. She was hauled inside, wrists bleeding under cuffs, her head high despite the weight. The judge waited, gavel poised, the room thick with tension. She'd broadcast the truth, toppled Decker's lies, but he'd killed Nia, taken Jamal, and turned her into a monster. The showdown had cost everything, her last stand ablaze, snuffed by his drones. She stood before the bench, swaying, Jamal's cry echoing in her skull, a lifeline she couldn't reach. Decker had bled, his empire cracked, but she was the one in chains. The city's fury a distant roar as the gavel fell. Aisha Carter stood in the Oakland courthouse, her wrists raw under the cuffs, her body a tapestry of bruises and defiance etched from weeks of hell. The room thrummed with tension, the gallery packed with press, protesters, and a handful of faces she'd once called friends. Her jumpsuit hung loose, torn and stained, a relic of her crawl through vents, her fight at the tower, and every blow Decker's men had landed. The judge, Evelyn Holt, loomed above, her silver hair a crown of authority, her gavel poised like a guillotine. Aisha's legs trembled, but she locked her knees, chin up, refusing to crumble. She'd broadcast Decker's emails, exposed his corruption, lost Nia in the showdown, and seen Jamal's face vanish behind federal hands. Sentencing was here, and she braced for life as a terrorist, a label Decker had branded into her soul with bombs and lies. The prosecutor, Darren Voss, strutted forward, his pinstripe suit pristine, his voice oil-slick. "Aisha Carter's a clear danger, Your Honor. Terrorism, inciting riots, the bombing that killed 32 innocents, life without parole minimum." He smirked, eyes glinting, as if her fate was a trophy. Samir Patel, her rookie defender, rose, his tie crooked, sweat beading on his brown skin. "She's innocent," he insisted, voice cracking but firm. "Decker framed her, the emails prove it. The bombing was his retaliation." He waved the hacked files, a lifeline frayed by disbelief. But Judge Holt's frown deepened, unconvinced. Aisha's chest tightened, the air thick with the weight of a system that never bent for her. She'd fought, bled, escaped, only to land here, a scapegoat in a war she couldn't win. The judge opened her mouth, gavel lifting, when the courtroom doors slammed open, a gust of chaos cutting through the silence. 5 figures in black suits strode in, Homeland Security badges flashing, their presence a jolt that hushed the crowd. A tall agent with a neatly trimmed beard led them, his stride clipped, a file clutched in his hand. Aisha's pulse spiked, dread coiling tight. Decker's drones had tasered her. Torres had tricked her. DHS was his endgame, here to seal her tomb. Voss paled, stumbling back while Samir froze, papers slipping. Judge Holt banged her gavel, voice sharp. "What is this? Identify yourselves." The bearded agent stepped forward, his tones steel. "Agent Daniel Reese, Department of Homeland Security. We have critical evidence intersecting with this case. National security demands we address the court now." Aisha's knees weakened, her mind racing. More lies? Another twist to bury her? The gallery buzzed, cameras clicking, as Reese handed his file to Voss, who flipped through it, his face draining of color. Holt leaned forward, brow creased. "Explain, Agent Reese." He cleared his throat, scanning the room, his gaze sober. "We've concluded an operation targeting corruption in Oakland PD. Chief Roland Decker was the primary suspect, not Aisha Carter. The Maple Avenue bombing, the planted evidence, her terrorism label, all orchestrated by Decker to protect his network. Local witnesses were coerced, evidence withheld. Carter's a victim, not a perpetrator." Aisha's breath caught, the words slamming into her like a freight train. Relief surged, dizzying and unreal, mingling with disbelief. Decker, the target. Not her. She risked a glance at the gallery, her parents' stunned faces swimming into view, tears streaking their cheeks. Voss sputtered, slamming the file down. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. We had no prior—" Reese cut him off, voice firm. "We have proof. The real bomber's in custody, apprehended in Nevada. Male, white, no link to Carter. Decker's orders are documented. We're prepared to testify local PD and the DA violated Brady disclosure, hiding exculpatory evidence." Aisha's head spun. Brady material. The rule mandating the prosecution share anything clearing her, flashing like a beacon. They'd buried it, kept her in chains, while Decker pulled strings. Voss's face twisted, fury and humiliation warring. His glare darting to Reese. "This is an ambush. We need time to verify." Holt's eyes narrowed, silencing him with a look. "Quiet, Counselor. I won't tolerate a miscarriage of justice. If DHS confirms this, we're done here." Aisha's heart hammered, the room tilting as reality shifted. She'd signed a fake confession, lost Jamal, watched Nia die, all for Decker's game. And now DHS, the force that tasered her, was flipping it. Judge Holt signaled her forward, voice steady. "Miss Carter, approach." Aisha shuffled up, Samir at her side, her legs like jelly but her spine steel. Holt's gaze softened, a crack in her stern mask. "In light of this evidence, it's clear you've been wrongly accused. I'm dismissing this case with prejudice." The gavel cracked, a thunderclap, and Aisha's tears broke free, hot and silent, sliding down her battered face. "Case dismissed. Free." The word echoed, a release she couldn't grasp. The gallery erupted, her parents leaping up, her mother sobbing, her father's fists raised. Latoya pushed through, braids swinging, tears glinting as she shouted Aisha's name. But the storm wasn't over. Holt's voice cut through again, sharp as a blade. "We're not finished. Chief Decker, approach." Aisha turned, breath hitching, as Decker lumbered from the back. His uniform crisp, but his face a mask of rage, blood still crusted from her shank at the tower. DHS agents flanked him, cuffs ready, and Reese stepped up. "Roland Decker, you're under arrest for corruption, evidence tampering, and orchestrating the Maple Avenue bombing. This was our sting. Carter was bait to draw you out." Decker's roar shook the room, his meaty hands thrashing as agents wrestled him down, steel snapping around his wrists. "This is a setup. She's the criminal," he bellowed, veins bulging. But his words drowned in the crowd's cheers. Aisha stared, her fists clenched, watching the man who'd stolen her life crumble, his empire ash. She'd cut him, exposed him, and now he'd bleed for it. Holt leveled her gaze at Voss and the cops in the wings, Vance, Perry, Sanders, slumped and pale. We'll investigate why this evidence was suppressed. Sanctions against Oakland PD and the DA's office are pending. Court adjourned. The gavel fell again. Final, and Aisha's world spun into chaos and light. Her family rushed her, arms engulfing her, their sobs a balm on her scars. Latoya hugged her tight, whispering, "You did it, girl." Aisha clung back, tears soaking. Her friend's shoulder, the weight lifting but leaving jagged edges. She was free, Decker cuffed, but Jamal wasn't here. She pulled back, wiping her face, voice hoarse. "Where's my son?" Reese approached, his badge glinting, his expression tight. "We're looking. Decker's loyalists swapped him in foster care, a last spite. He's missing, but we'll find him." Aisha's stomach dropped, relief souring into dread. Free, but not whole. Jamal, her heart stolen in Decker's final twist. She nodded, jaw tight, resolve hardening. "I'll find him myself." The courthouse doors swung open, Oakland's sun blinding after weeks in shadow. She stepped out, the crowd parting, their cheers a wall of sound. Justice for Aisha down with Decker, her name a phoenix rising from the wreckage. Cameras flashed, reporters shouting, but she walked through, her parents at her sides, Latoya trailing, her eyes on the horizon. The city stretched before her, scarred and alive, hers to reclaim. Decker's cuffs clinked as they dragged him past, his glare meeting hers, a defeated beast in chains. She smiled, thin and fierce, tasting his fall. She'd survived his arrests, his beatings, his bombs, and now he'd rot. But Jamal's absence gnawed, a void she'd fill. Her scars ached, her body frail, but her spirit burned, a fire no cage could douse. She'd fought from a cell to this moment, toppled a titan and won her freedom. The hunt for her son was next, a vow etched in her bones as Oakland roared around her, a new dawn breaking through the smoke. This gripping tale of Aisha Carter's struggle against systemic racism offers profound lessons. First, resilience can defy even the darkest odds. Aisha faced false arrests, brutal beatings, and the loss of her son, yet her spirit never broke, proving that inner strength can outlast external oppression. Second, truth, though buried, can surface with relentless effort. Her fight to expose Decker's corruption, despite his escalating retaliation, shows that persistence can crack even the toughest lies. Third, community matters. From Latoya's loyalty to Nia's reporting, Aisha's allies amplified her voice, highlighting the power of collective resistance against injustice. Fourth, systemic racism isn't just personal, it's institutional. Decker's ability to manipulate police, courts, and DHS reveals how deeply prejudice is woven into power structures, a sobering call to confront these roots. Finally, victory can be bittersweet. Aisha won her freedom and saw Decker fall, but Jamal's absence underscores that justice often leaves scars. These lessons challenge us to stand firm, seek truth, build support, dismantle bias, and brace for complex outcomes. Aisha's journey isn't just a story. It's a mirror to our world, urging action over apathy. So what's your take? How would you fight back if the system turned on you? Drop a comment, hit like if this moved you, and subscribe for more stories that spark change. Share this to keep the conversation alive. Thanks for joining Aisha's battle. Here's to a future where justice prevails for all.